Today, we're going to tear down one of the biggest and honestly most dangerous myths in the construction world. It's this idea that any building put up after 1980 is automatically asbestos-free. We're going to show you why that's just not true and what you really need to know to keep your projects safe and, well, legal. All right, let's get into it. You've probably heard this, or maybe you've even said it yourself. It's the first thing people ask. It just feels like common sense, right? That there's some kind of magic date, 1980. And after that, poof, no more asbestos worries. It sounds logical, but the truth is, it's a trap. So let's just get this out of the way right now. The idea that a post-1980 building doesn't need an asbestos survey is 100% false. And acting on that belief, well, that's where things get dangerous. We're talking serious health risks, massive fines, and even jail time. So yeah, it's a pretty good deal. So if it's so wrong, why does everybody seem to believe it? I mean, a myth this big doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. It actually comes from a really confusing mix of government regulations over the years that, left a lot of people with the wrong impression. Let's look at the timeline to see how this all got started. Okay, so here's the story. In the 70s, the EPA started banning a few asbestos products. But the real trouble starts in 1986. That's when OSHA, the worker safety folks, created this term, presumed asbestos-containing material, for buildings built in 1980 or earlier. And that right there is the birth of the myth. But here's the kicker everyone misses. The EPA tried to ban asbestos completely in 1989, but the courts overturned it in 1991. The shocking result? A ton of asbestos products were, and still are, perfectly legal to manufacture and use in the US. To really untangle all this, you have to know about the two main agencies involved, the EPA and OSHA. They both deal with asbestos, but they have totally different jobs. And understanding that difference is absolutely key to not getting in trouble. Here's the simplest way to think about it. The EPA's main concern is the public, making sure asbestos fibers don't get out into the air we all breathe. OSHA, on the other hand, is all about the workers on the job site. Their job is to protect the people who are actually doing the renovation or demolition. Two different missions. So, digging a little deeper, the EPA is about public health. The air, the water, the land, and how to safely remove and get rid of asbestos. And a lot of times, they let the state or local guys handle the enforcement. OSHA is federal, and they are laser-focused on keeping workers safe from exposure on the job. Both are super important. But for a building owner planning a project, it's the EPA's rules that are going to dictate what you have to do. And that brings us to the big one, the single most important regulation you need to know about. It's called the Asbestos NESHAP. And this is the rule that blows that whole post-1980 myth right out of the water. So what in the world is NESHAP? It stands for National Emission Standards for Hazardous Air Pollutants. Basically, it's a major federal rule under the Clean Air Act. And its whole point is to protect all of us by making sure asbestos fibers don't escape into the air when a building is being worked on or torn down. Now you're probably asking, okay, does this thing even apply to me? Well, it covers pretty much any commercial, industrial, or public building you can think of. For residential spots, it kicks in for bigger places, like apartment buildings with 5 or more units, or any house being torn down as part of a bigger project. The only real exception is a small residential building with 4 or fewer units, as long as it's not part of something bigger. Now listen up, because this one is huge. If you are demolishing a building that falls under NESHAP, you have to file a notification with the authorities, period. This is true even if your survey finds 0 asbestos. For any and all demolitions, that notification is mandatory, no exceptions. Now for renovations, things are a little different. The full-blown NESHAP process doesn't get triggered for every little job. The rules really kick in once you hit a certain threshold amount of asbestos-containing material that you're planning to disturb. So let's look at exactly what those amounts are. The first magic number is 260 linear feet. This is for stuff on pipes, like old insulation. Just think about all the piping in a decent-sized boiler room. Yeah, you can hit 260 feet pretty darn fast. The next one is 160 square feet. This is for asbestos on other things, like your floor tiles, ceiling tiles, you name it. And to give you an idea, 160 square feet is just a small 10 by 16-foot room. It's not a huge area at all. And finally, we have 35 cubic feet. This is the one they use if the material has already been ripped out and you can't measure it by length or area. Picture something about the size of one of those big rolling dumpsters. If your project hits any one of these numbers, you've got to follow all the NESHAP rules. Okay, So we've covered the what and the why. Let's get to the how. This might all sound complicated, but honestly, it boils down to a pretty straightforward 4-step process to make sure you're doing everything by the book. Step 1. The survey. Before you do anything else, you have to get a certified inspector in there to check the place out. Step 2. Notify. You fill out the official form and send it to your local or state agency at least 10 business days before you start the work. Step 3. Removal. This has to be done following very specific, safe procedures. And finally, step 4. Disposal. All that asbestos waste has to be handled and tossed out exactly how NESHAP says. So look, if you walk away with just one thing today, please let it be this. Under the EPA's NESHAP rule, you are required to do an asbestos survey before you renovate or demolish. The year the building was built, it just doesn't matter. Not at all. So why are we hammering this home so hard? Because getting this wrong has consequences that are just incredibly serious. This isn't just about a slap on the wrist. We're talking about people's health, about fines that can cripple a business, and yes, even prison time. Let's not forget the reason for all these rules. This is about protecting people's health. Asbestos is a known carcinogen. When those tiny fibers get in the air and into your lungs, they can cause horrible, fatal diseases like mesothelioma. These rules are literally here to save lives. And because the health risks are so high, the penalties are just as severe. We're not talking about a civil penalty here. If you knowingly break these NESHAP rules, it's a criminal offense under the Clean Air Act. And these penalties are no joke. I mean, just look at this. Violating the work rules can land you in prison for up to 5 years. Lying on a form or just forgetting to notify the government, that's 2 years. Oh, and if you get caught a second time, all these penalties are doubled. They are not messing around. So let's end on this quote because it just says it all perfectly. Sure, is a newer building less likely to have asbestos? Yeah, probably. But is it guaranteed to be 100% free of it? Absolutely not. And that's the bottom line. That's why the law is the law. You don't guess, you don't assume, you survey.